Did you guys get the massive recording in progress on the screen?
We did. I wonder if Zoom got in trouble, and that's what made them put that in place.
Oh, I imagine, yeah. People said, "Oh, I didn't know I was getting recorded," or whatnot, and then so they put this giant warning sign down.
There are certain states in which you have to, if you are recording a conversation, you have to let the other party know that you're recording the conversation.
It makes sense.
It does make sense.
But yeah, let's kick this off. I'm pumped that we set this up. I know it's busy schedule, so I hope we do this more often. But we got the three guys of NCFIT here for this podcast. Effort over everything. I have a couple things I want to talk about. So why don't we just kick it off?
Bro, let's kick it off.
Jay, you were just on Andy Frisella's Real AF podcast, man. I listened to that from beginning to end. It was good, man. But man, I thought you handled it well. They had some, tough, uncomfortable questions. How was it to as they're talking, what's going through your head? Because you know that they're going to start asking these questions that are uncomfortable.
Oh, they're super uncomfortable. I mean, I'm actually really happy I did it because it got me out of my comfort zone. We talk about this idea of getting a little uncomfortable. And that was an example of, I think we talk about it in terms like workouts and this and that. But in that particular case, when you're on a major platform, they get millions of downloads and you're in a room where your viewpoints are slightly different, but not as far off as some people would think. I knew that going into it, it was going to be an interesting conversation, and surely it was. I really tried to hold myself to this idea that I'm going to go in there and just speak the way I feel and my truth. And if someone likes it, great. If they don't like it, that's fine too. But this is the way I feel, vaccinated, unvaccinated, et cetera. But I thought overall the feedback we got, I got hundreds and hundreds of messages from people that said they really appreciated the conversation because right now people aren't really talking as much. They're just kind of yelling at each other. But when you actually start having a conversation, you realize you probably have more in common than you think. And so I thought that was a good example of that.
I haven't listened to it just yet. We'll listen to it later on today. But what was one of the questions that they asked you that didn't put you on your heels, but was a little bit uncomfortable? What was one of them?
I'll give you a really good example. So my wife hosts an annual fundraiser called Ava's Kitchen. And for me, that's not business. That's super personal to us. And we try and raise money for kids fighting cancer. And that event is held at the 49ers Stadium with Michael Mina. And Sal Frizella had been there in the past. And he's a great guest and he does a lot for the organization. And he was saying hey, if there's a vaccine mandate in effect, are you not going to let me in because I'm not vaccinated? And that put me in a really uncomfortable position because I care for him. I would allow him at my house any day of the week. But if the Niners Stadium has rules and regulations against that, and the restaurant does as well, there's also this idea that, there's this concept that we chose as an organization to abide by state and county laws. We may agree or disagree with them, but we've decided that that's the line we've drawn. And I think that if we're going to stick to that, then we got to kind of abide by it. And if we don't like the rules that are being in place, we should then look for new leadership in those positions. But if that is the case for the 49ers Stadium, we kind of need to abide by it. But it got really awkward because, dude, I don't want to tell my friend that he can't go because he doesn't have a vaccine. That's weird. And I think people should have the choice if they want to get it or not. That's my opinion. But if the restaurant has a rule and we're going to put them with more liability and more risk, and that was an awkward part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's complicated, man. And I feel for you in that situation because you have obviously a very close personal relationship with Sal, and he's got a set of beliefs, and you have another obligation to the organization that you're raising money for. And, you have this location with this crew that you've worked with over years and built a relationship with them. And, I think for me, in this is where I come down to in a lot of these conversations is that the state and local and federal government have pushed all of these conflicts down to the lowest common denominator. They push it all down to the people at the end of the equation, making the decisions, as opposed to, and putting the onus on those people to say, hey, you're my friend, you can't come to this because there's a rule that says you have to have X, Y, or Z. it's just, it's unfortunate, you know, and I think that it could have been handled a little bit differently, and hindsight's always 2020, but yeah, that's a difficult question to answer. And I'm looking forward to hearing your full response on the show.
Yeah, I mean, the feedback we got from people who are, right, left, middle, whatever, was that at least, Andy's a very passionate, strong leader. And being in a room with him, he's very powerful in his conviction, and he's really good at what he does. Phenomenal motivator. When you're in a room and you maybe are asking questions, I think what the listeners like is that I had a few questions for him and I had a slightly different viewpoint, and that was okay. Like Sal and I were sitting next to each other, and we kind of like, we're joking. Sal's like, I'm unvaccinated. And I'm like, I'm vaccinated. And look, we can still be friends. And like, it's okay. So those are some of the big takeaways from the talk. But for me, it did help me get outside my shell a little bit, just because I try and stay away from all those subjects. And I didn't get too far down the rabbit hole with them. But it opened me up to be more comfortable. If that conversation came up again, I'd be willing to have it again, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job. And I think it was a really interesting conversation. So highly encourage you guys to check out Real AF with Andy Frisella, the episode that Jason was on. That was my big takeaway. Is I thought it was cool that, you guys are really close friends. You spend some time at their HQ, and you don't see eye to eye about something that's really polarizing and people are really split on, but you were able to have, a 2.5 hour conversation. I think both sides got a lot of productive insights from the other side. And it was just nice to see that conversation be able to happen. And at the end, everyone was okay. And you guys are obviously still really good friends. And I thought that was powerful. The other piece that I really took away from that podcast that I thought was cool is, Andy and Sal, they own a supplement company. And that podcast wasn't about supplements. They mentioned it. They talked about it. They talked about 75 Hard a little bit. But I love, and we've been spending a lot of time talking about First Form, their culture, and a lot of things those guys are doing right. And I think that, one really cool thing is how true they are to who they are, and how that podcast is just about who is Andy, who is Sal, who are the faces behind this company. And that's what I want to do with the three of us on this show, hopefully more often, is I want people that love NCFIT, follow NCFIT, to be able to get to know MDV a little bit more and Jason a little bit more. And for us to talk about, not necessarily just fitness and health all the time, but maybe some things that we're super passionate about that kind of bring a light to who we are, and hopefully bring some people in the organization that aren't just us three, and really add some personality, because I think that that's what they do really well. And I think that's why First Form has, this culture and this following that we have, which is, why I thought that webinar that we had with Sal was so good. And I think we got some really good takeaways from that stuff. And I know that we're going to be going to First Form hopefully in November as a team. Jay, what do you think? What do you think a really good takeaway would be from the team kind of heading out that way? And what have you learned from those guys and the time you spent there?
I think the key for us is that from a business perspective, if we're specifically talking there, it's this idea that holding line, attention to detail, I think is the greatest way to look at it. And MDV and I were actually having this conversation yesterday about people on the team and the attention to detail, because ultimately you live and die by the attention and detail on your particular product. And so for them, it might be, hey, is their product getting, infested with some type of whatever that's going to pop some drug list, or is their ingredients not exactly what's on there? But for us, it's our session plans, our programming, all the different tools we're putting out. Is there this attention to detail? And I think when you walk around their space, the attention to detail they've taken to their bathrooms, into their gym floor, into their way that they put the weights away in their locker rooms, and everything from the top down, it's so simple. Hey, we're going to do everything the same way. It's going to have this attention to detail. Like, for example, what Sal was talking about not pushing in your chair. And I think those are things that we need to continue to do more of. And it was a good learning lesson for me, just to kind of like, just a little kick in the butt. Like, hey man, just when you think you're doing okay, there's always somebody that's doing a little bit better. It's kind of like jujitsu.
I had the privilege of going out to First Form a while back as well. And, I saw a lot of the same things that Jason saw, and I had a lot of the same takeaways. The thing for me that stuck out, attention to detail is up there. And I think it kind of levels into just having pride in everything that you do. and not only for the company and how you treat the equipment and how you treat the facilities and how you treat, you know, your job there, but how you treat the people around you, how you treat yourself. I think that there was a really high level of personal conviction there that is uncommon in a lot of people and things that I see out there. You know, these guys, regardless of what you think about their more polarizing points of view on kind of current events and the things that are going down, it's important to hear from people like that, even if you're on the opposite side, and to understand where they're coming from. And even if you don't end up agreeing with them, I think that you can listen and you can maybe internalize what they're thinking and still have your point of view. But regardless of those, I think that the thing that's really powerful about Sal and Andy and the leaders at the top of that company is that those guys hold the line relentlessly on what they believe, down to the most minute, like Jason was talking about, details. In their gym at their facility, every single plate goes away with the numbers facing the right direction. And Andy and Sal are no exception to that rule. In fact, they're the people who made the fucking rule. They made it that way and they started it and they hold the line on it, and they are relentless in holding the line. They never let up. They are always on. And that's was a huge learning for me. And that's a great example to set for everybody down the ladder, because, you know, in terms of creating a culture, if the leaders at the top of the organization are not living the type of culture that they're preaching, and they're not living it relentlessly to the highest degree, there always will be cracks in the foundation for everybody else below them to point fingers at, or to kind of chip away at what's going on. Those guys don't allow any of that. And it starts and ends with them. And I think they really embrace that more than anybody else I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one thing that Sal brought up on the webinar, and, you know, it relates to Jay, the reason you were there in the first place. And I think that it's been a big lesson for me in my career. And I think it could be a big lesson to coaches, gym owners that are out there listening. And it's this idea of constantly surrounding yourself by people, brands, you know, they're elevating your game, right? Like, you went out there because you wanted to be inspired by First Form and what they're doing. You know, I love spending time with the two of you because you guys are going to elevate, you know, what I'm doing. And I'm spending time, you know, I'm rubbing shoulders with people that, you know, are a business owner, a great coach. And I think that that's, you know, elevated me in my career, my time at NCFIT. And I think that, you know, coaches out there, Jason, you mention this all the time with gym owners specifically, you know, sometimes you feel like you're on this island, right? Like, there's no other gym owner that you can go and talk to. And I think it takes a little bit of effort, but we can all find other business owners, other gym owners, mentors, people to just grab some coffee with, to ask questions. And if they have a more successful business than you, if they have something that you're aspiring to have, like, that's the kind of person that I want to be around. Because there's so much you can learn by just like spending time with people that are doing things right, just being a sponge and learning. And I'm sure that that's what you got spending some time with Sal.
Well, I want to add to that. So, you know, it's interesting in life, right? You meet people you get inspired by. And maybe with MDV, you get inspired by his workouts and his work ethic. Maybe with you get inspired by your nutritional components, whatever. You don't have to be overall inspired by like the whole person, meaning like you could identify specific areas that they inspire you by. Maybe they inspire you really well from a business perspective, but in their personal life, they're lacking, right? And you could then look at that and say, okay, well, I'm going to be inspired by the business side, but I'm also going to learn from them in the sense that like maybe these other areas I'm not as inspired by, but there's someone else in my life that I'm really inspired by in that particular way. I want to emulate these characteristics of these people. And so when you go out to somewhere where they're doing something really special, you walk in there with an open mind and saying, hey, what can I learn from this? And I think as a leader, as a business owner, or for anybody in their career path, it's identifying those people around you in business, in fitness, in family, in health, in whatever. And going out there really made an impact on me. I do other things. So I'll just give you an example. We have had NCFIT now coming on like 13, 14 years. That's a long time. And sometimes I feel like from a trajectory, a leadership perspective, I haven't done everything that's in my power to do that. So today I actually have a call with Echelon Front guys and with Jocko and his team, right? To see what type of leadership skills can I pull from them to then impart on our team. In addition, I have reconnected with my alma mater, Santa Clara University, to start sitting in on specific business courses. I'm actually doing one next week. And those are little things that I'm doing that we don't really talk about much, that I'm trying to hold myself accountable to say, hey, what is my role at NCFIT? Okay, it's this. What things am I doing on a regular basis to enhance that? And obviously then I take that into my personal life with fitness and also my kids. But I just wanted to share that because I think that's important to, just because you're the owner of the company or the president or whoever you are, there's always something, someone you can learn from.
Always. And, I think that there's also this, and MDV, you've talked about this before, and I love your take on this. It's, there's also sometimes people that are like, well, why are you trying so hard at that stuff? Like, why are you constantly working out, and why are you constantly eating well, and why are you constantly seeking out mentors and stuff like that? And sometimes it can feel like, you're the strange one, you're the weird one for doing all those things. And I think it's such an important mindset to have an MDV. You said this, perfectly. It's, that's just my normal, and I'm okay with that because I'm trying to go this way, and that's perfectly okay. Has that always been kind of your approach to that stuff, MDV, or is that something that's kind of evolved recently?
Oh, well, I think it's taken me a little while to fully embrace it. I was having a conversation with somebody this morning, and we were talking a little bit about, hey, I'm not the same person that I was 2 weeks ago. I'm not the same person that I was 2 months ago. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago, let alone 2 decades ago. I think that, I've come to embrace the fact that I'm a constantly evolving thing, and that I'm trying to pull all these different lessons, not only from my personal interactions and the things that I've done in my life and my career and how I live my day-to-day life, but also watching people around me, like Jason was saying, who I'm inspired by, to see how they handle certain situations or see what their opinions are. And also listen and look to people who I might not necessarily always put at the top of my list, but maybe have differing opinions on things, and try to open my mind up to different points of view on stuff, and be less fundamental about like, hey, this is the only way that I can think about this one thing. Well, maybe there's a different perspective I haven't thought about just yet, and being more open to that. But, in terms of the way that I live my life, I've really come to embrace the fact that I need habit and routine and discipline in order to just feel good personally. Like it's something that I need structure. My days need to start and end at certain times. They need to have certain routines and rituals. And it's not because, I'm trying to live my life like a secluded monk out there in whatever, but it just sets me up for success. It doesn't make me feel out of control. It makes me feel really positive about the life that I'm living and the things that I'm doing. So for other people, it might look extreme. It might look like, hey, this person can never relax. Hey, relaxing for me is waking up early and reading Daily Stoic and sipping coffee. That's also something that I need to do just to start my day off right, so I don't feel like I'm out of control by the time my first meeting starts. Everybody's a little bit different in that regard.
Generally,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to ask, MDV, generally speaking, do you think people need more structure in their life, or is it just like, hey, different strokes for different folks?
Oh gosh, this is kind of like a little bit of a hot button issue. I'm going to take the unpopular opinion on this. I think that we probably would all be a little better off with a little bit more structure and discipline in our lives. I think that's just my perspective on things, the way that I see things right now going down, the way that I see people interacting, and in particular, and maybe it's not structure and discipline. Maybe the more important thing that I think is lacking is that people are lacking connection. People are lacking meaning or purpose. And I think that I find some of that through structure and discipline and being more focused. But maybe that's not where you find connection and purpose. Maybe you find connection and purpose elsewhere. But I do think that is a huge gap in causing a lot of friction and a lot of strife, not only for people personally, but how people interact and how people are looking at, how we are interacting as a society here in the United States.
I'm going to back you up. I agree. But I like that take and that nuance of maybe it isn't so much structure and discipline, and it's more, meaning and fulfillment. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm very similar to you in that respect, that I love kind of the monotony, the repetition, the discipline, the structure. And
I'm the complete opposite.
So I'm curious, Jay, what's
Yeah.
your take?
No, so like, dude, I obviously it's a good conversation because you have guys who, someone will look and be like, oh, like MDV actually said, like, oh, you're too regimented, you're too this. But to him, that's what sets him up for success. And he's had to do deep evaluations probably over the years to say, hey, when I do this, I don't feel as good. When I do this, I feel better. I should continue to do this. For me, it's a little bit different, right? So I have certain things that I do on a regular basis. Like I wake up at similar times. I always get some type of movement or activity right first thing in the morning. But aside from that, everything else, I just kind of wing it for the most part. And that's what works for me. So typically, I'll be on some type of fitness side by 6:30. This morning I did a cool little thing in the garage. Yesterday I rucked. And then throughout the duration of the day, I don't structure very many meetings. I'm more fly off the cuff. When I've tried to have too much structure, I resisted against it. And I remember one point, this was a couple of years ago, we hired someone who was kind of an assistant. I had never had one before. And she tried to structure the day and I just resisted it. I didn't want to have that. And it didn't allow me to perform well. And I think that each person, back to MDV's point, is like, if it makes you feel better to have more structure, go for it. For me, I've tried structure. I've tried that. And I resisted against it. And I find more fulfillment by not having that structure, but having certain things throughout the duration of the day that I want to get accomplished, like get in some workouts, definitely spend time with the family, and obviously work.
Man, that just wouldn't cut it for me. It gives me anxiety to think about it. But, on that note, I have a question for both of you. And it's, obviously we deal a lot with coaches and gym owners. And I think that, sometimes there's definitely a place for like more structure and discipline in our space specifically. And gym owners running their business and coaches trying to take, their career seriously. And, we've done pro dev, we've done courses for coaches. We obviously have the collective where we service gym owners. Where do you guys think is the line? Because I kind of go back and forth on this. And, we always say we have this white glove service, right? We're always going to be super, super service forward for the collective members that we have. Where do you draw the line between that and also like instilling a bit of like resourcefulness and discipline to those gym owners and not trying to, almost make it too easy for them? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Some of the cows get out and the dog is ringing the alarm.
Dude, you never know what's going to go down on that farm, huh, MDV? Yeah, you got like 40 animals there now?
Green acres down there. Hey, no, this is a really good question. I'm not going to name any names, but there's some comments that sometimes go up on the Facebook group and the group that we interact with where, a lot of things people are looking for just to be completely spoon fed to them to the ultimate degree where they don't have to do anything and it's just there for them. And I think in some senses, as somebody who's running a business in which we do want to have white glove service, we kind of ask for some of that ourselves where, hey, we are going to make this as easy as humanly possible for you. That's one of the intentions of our business with the NCFIT Collective, is to make the whole programming, professional development, running an excellent business, making sure your product on the floor is bulletproof. The explanations behind your workouts are all there. Your coaches have all the tools that they need. We want to simplify that as much as possible for the gym owners so they don't have to fucking worry about it. I get it. But there is a line at which you have to go, okay, I can't literally FaceTime you right now and log you into the new portal and show you which button to click to go pull up the new thing that we just posted. There is a level of resourcefulness that I do think that everybody should have it's almost like having an own personal level of responsibility about just how you do anything in life and just not being helpless. I think that that's the line for me, is that the helplessness line. I want to assist people as much as humanly possible. I will go above and beyond. And anybody who's in the collective should know this by now. I will answer your questions in depth. If you have a legitimate question about why we do something, a movement, an approach, a practice, a philosophy, we're going to talk about it. We're going to have a really interesting discussion. But I think that there's a line where we go, all right, listen, you just got to my mom used to tell me when I was younger, my mom used to tell me this, I'd be like, hey mom, is there any more orange juice? And she'd be like, well, go look in the fridge. And I'd be like, oh, well, I opened the door. I didn't see it. And she'd go, move the milk, you dummy. Like, it's like, you just have to take the milk carton out of the way and move it to the side. And the orange juice is right there. You know, that's kind of like the level for me where I go, all right, you have to figure this out yourself. Long-winded way of answering that question, but that's where
Jay, I'm curious your take, man, because it's tough, right? Like, you know, we're also operating a business with the collective, right? And we value every single membership and we want to earn their business every single day. I take that super seriously. So you obviously want to, hey, if you have a question, I'll answer it. If you're having trouble getting on the app, like, let's help you. If you can't figure out the password to the collective corner, like, let's help you. But, you know, if our underlying mission with the collective is to really set these gym owners up for success, at what point are we doing them a disservice by, you know, literally hand feeding them every single thing? And I'm not saying that this is every collective member. I actually think it's a very, very small minority, but you know, where
it's a bigger question, right? I mean, what you're referring to is kind of like more of a holistic perspective, right? So like, for example, my kids, if they can't open up a sparkling water, right? But I know they can. Am I going to go over there and do that for them, or am I going to let them try and figure it out? And for how long am I going to let them figure it out for? You know, Ashley has this thing, like yesterday, I was trying to find something very similar to what MDV was talking about. I was like, hey, Ashley, I can't find Caden's shoes. And she goes, they're in the closet. I was like, they're not in the closet. She goes, I swear, Jason, if I come up there and I find them in the closet, I'm going to throw them at you or whatever. And sure enough, they weren't in the closet. But it's a good example of how there's got to be a little bit of ownership taken. I think from a collective perspective, I think things like getting on the app, doing those that's more of administrative type stuff. And I think that for us as a service forward business, we want to make sure that we answer those questions. And we have to know that this is not their top priority, right? Their top priority is X, Y, and Z. And we know the app, we know these things like the back of our hand. I think that's important to recognize. It's kind of like when you're a coach and a member comes in and you say, hey, can you find your heels in a squat or whatever it is? And you say it over and over again. To you, it's like second nature. You know you want to find it, but to them, it's brand new information. And so it's a little bit of an overload. So how much is that happening with our customers? Maybe. But I think from a business tools perspective, we need to be careful that oftentimes there's a reason why people blame programming for lack of results. It's because it's the one independent denominator that does not reflect back on the person and taking ownership in their fitness. So for example, if someone's not getting the results they're looking for, they're not going to look at nutrition or sleep or consistency. They're going to point to the program because it's the easiest one to say, hey, this thing that's outside of my control is impacting me. And so I think as owners, as just as anybody, you know, you got to start taking into consideration, you know, I guess where I'm trying to go with this is that we can't do everything for anybody. They have to take, we can only provide the tools, and then they have to take that step forward. And I think when we start selling it like, hey, join the collective, we're going to help, you know, double your business. That's not what we're saying. We're just going to provide you the tools that are going to help you get there. But you got to take that step and go implement them and go do the work to get after it.
I agree with Jason. I think that like this is probably a conversation outside of just like membership in the collective or membership in the NCFIT gyms. I think that this comes down to, you know, personal level of responsibility that you have to have, like a basic personal level of responsibility. And then also it's a little bit of having, in some senses, some self-respect in terms of like being able to help yourself through some of these things, because life isn't always going to be easy. In fact, life is very, very challenging, you know, and I think that's challenging to different degrees for people. You know, a lot of times, you know, I face problems that a lot of people would look at and go, well, that's not really a problem, but it's a big problem for me. And I think that, you know, when you get to that point and you're faced with adversity, you want to be able to have the tools and the resources at your disposal to not be crippled by that, to not be crushed by it, whatever the point of adversity is you're facing, whether or not it's humongous or it's tiny or whatever. You get to that point, you want to be able to have some level of resourcefulness, some level of responsibility that you can surmount that, or at least deal with it and not have it just shatter you completely.
You know, Ariel, so my wife, Ariel, she signed up for this business coach. And, you know, one of the things that they did during their course that I liked, and I'm not sure how this would do for something like the collective. So I'm curious your guys' thoughts. But one of the rules of asking questions in the Facebook group to where the coach would always then answer them is, did you Google it? did you check the FAQ page? And only if you did those two are you allowed to kind of ask that question. And the whole thinking behind it was like teaching this idea of resourcefulness and really trying to make, people be independent and not just always ask the questions and expect an answer right away. Would an approach like that actually teach something? Would there be some value there? Or is that, kind of taking the easy way out and not being service forward? What do you guys think?
I don't necessarily know if you need a formal rule about it. I think that, in the business that we run, there are some confusing things that we put out. There are things that, somebody might look at for the first time, or we have a constant influx of new people. We have not always the most kind of clear direction on things. We're trying to do the best that we can. But, if we launch something new, we're only human. We sometimes don't communicate in the clearest fashion. So people have questions about it, or they, the email went to their spam folder instead of going to their regular folder, and I think it's good. Again, I think it's good practice to have these things nailed down for you personally. This is another line that I kind of want to draw. I don't want to tell you what level of personal responsibility to have. I think that it's better for you to develop those skills on your own. I can help you figure it out, and I can teach you, and I can show you what works for me. But like, I don't know if I would necessarily be down with being like, oh, you have to Google it first, check the FAQs, and then go here. I would just say, hey, that's good practice, I think, in general for you to have, and go from there.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like that approach, because I'm always a big believer that the customer is always right, service forward approach, and also taking ownership from our side too. As much as we want to say, oh, go check the FAQs, this, that, the reality is if you get more than a few people, chances are we didn't communicate it effectively. So how often can we say, back to the whole coach member experience thing, right? We're saying, find your heels, find your heels, find your heels. Well, obviously whatever we're saying is not connecting. And so we need to do a better job evaluating how well are we disseminating this information so that people actually pick it up. I think that's important in all areas, right? Like, it's like having a conversation with your wife and you're saying something over and over, but it's not getting through. Well, pivot the conversation so you can have a good conversation. And reflecting on that, I think, is really important when we're putting out new information. Like, for example, we're launching a new program in November called NCFIT. When we launch it, the onus is on us to make sure that we clearly communicate that. And if we don't, then we're going to get feedback about it.
I actually disagree with Jason that the customer is always right.
Woo!
I think that's too
old school stuff.
That's old school. That's very old school. That's the oldest school that you
too old school.
Yeah. I think that fundamental rules like that are ridiculous. There are situations where the customer is wrong 100% of the time. You can just call it an extreme. The customer is, let's just say they're being racist or bigoted or whatever, and they're being completely disrespectful or completely out of line. 100%, we should fucking fire that customer right away.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, I think it's a slippery slope when you go, hey, the customer is always right. No, there's a line, just like there's a line for helplessness and personal responsibility. The customer, for us, I have a tremendous respect for everybody in the collective who joins our service, who wants to participate as an active and positive member of the community. If you do not get down with that, we're not the right place for you. I'm not going to say that you're right because you're going to have a negative attitude or you have bad things to say about other people in the group. You're wrong. But I think that this is not the place for you, and you should either be exited or you should find somewhere else where you get your product from. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's just my old school sales mentality, right? Where it's like, I kind of like lived by like the blackjack code. I mean, MDV, you play a little bit of blackjack. Like we're like, the casino has like the book, right? And the book says on 15 hit or whatever it is.
Always play by the rules.
Always play by the rules. And I was just a big believer. And yes, I've been burned for sure. But I would always just play by the rules, meaning the customer is always right. Like if they ask for a refund or whatever it is, eventually, right, if you play by the rules, you'll win. But every now and then you get burned in the process. But yes, there's definitely exceptions. That's probably not the right statement now that I think about it in full term. Because like, yeah, if they're going in there and they're, whatever, like you said, belittling people, that they're not right. You know what I mean?
Well, I think this comes back to the first form conversation, to be honest. Like, this is where I think those guys are so strong, is that they are ridiculously consistent with their culture.
Yeah.
They have their set of beliefs and they go, this is who we are. And if you want to get down with this, and these are all beliefs that are incredibly positive and powerful and can help people. And that's who they are at their core. I know that they say some wild stuff, but who they are at their core is, very loving, caring, inclusive people. They want to bring other like-minded people into that. And they want other people to experience that. And that's how they're being so successful in what they're doing. And I think that, if you're a company or you're a business or you're a gym owner or coach, if you have a strong sense of culture, people are going to be attracted to that and they're going to want to participate in that. But if you're constantly trying to pull people into it who are grinding against you, or you have people in that who are constantly trying to chip away, the best thing that you can do is remove that person or remove yourself from that situation, because it will be an anchor to you. It will drag you fucking down. And we've learned this lesson the hard way, just being honest. And I think that, in the collective, it's different. We have not had this kind of circumstance. 99.9% of the people who are in the collective, and we have hundreds, if not thousands of people who are participating in that group. They're awesome. But, we've been burned by people who have been on our coaching staff who have grinded against us every step of the way. And we try. At some point, you just got to say, we got to pull the pin, man. This is not right.
On that note, how does a gym owner, or any practical advice for either a gym owner, or this would actually apply to a personal trainer, nutrition coach, how do you fire a client? And like, how do you become okay with that when, hey, you're a gym coming out of COVID, like 100 members, really trying to get to that next, like, how are you okay with, you're listening to this conversation, you're like, man, there's this one member that like, I should probably cut ties with. Like, how do you approach that? And, Jay, have you ever had to do something like that?
Yeah, we have. I mean, fortunately for me, back in the day, I did it a few times, but now we have other people who are able to jump into that position, who have more of a relationship with that person. We talk about this idea of seagull management, where I've talked about this before, where, what I used to do is I'd go into a gym and I'd be like a seagull. This is what they say. You fly in, you provide some level of feedback, normally negative, and you leave. And it's like a seagull flying in, shitting on people, and then taking off. And it's not cool. And I ended up doing this for a while, and I had to kind of check myself. I remember this guy, his name's Mike Cordano, told me about this theory, because I didn't have the same rapport and relationship with some of these staff. I would just come in maybe once a week, whatever. I would provide some feedback that I thought was constructive, but it wasn't being taken that way because they didn't see me enough. And it kind of looked like I was coming in and just raining on their parade and being really hard when I was really trying to be constructive. But because I didn't have that relationship, it came off polarizing. Same thing goes with the membership, right? If you have a member who's consistently talking to you and you have a good rapport with this person, but it's a toxic one, I think it's time where you just sit them down privately and say, hey, I think we just might be on two different wavelengths. Where we've seen it happen is that when we make changes and adjustments, normally those people will find their way out, normally. Like, for example, if you have a competition team that's in the corner snatching while you're trying to coach, and you then say, hey, there's no more open gym during class times, typically those people will find a different place to go do that at another gym. That's what I've found. But I think the key is having a good relationship, good or bad, but at least you have a rapport and relationship before you have that conversation. Otherwise it comes off unauthentic and really weird.
And when you make those changes, holding the line, right?
Yeah,
right? Like when you make those changes and you're like, hey, I'm doing this for the good of my community, and it's going to kind of push those people out or have them change. There's no, making exceptions, because then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Sorry, MDV, guys.
No. I think it's a great point. I was going to say, I think strong enough cultures become self-selecting, where it becomes really hard to, if you are grinding against this really kind of forward momentum of a strong culture, you will feel uncomfortable in that, and you probably won't want to be there anymore. That's a self-selecting type of system. It also becomes very obvious that there are people who are on the fringe who, I might have to have a couple of conversations with this person. They're a good person. I want to pull them in. Or there are people who are on the fringe where you go, this person is not really getting down with anything I'm saying. They don't believe in the same things I believe in, and they are going the opposite direction. And I have to have a conversation with that person about, hey, this is probably not a great fit. But I do think that if you're talking about somebody who's a customer, or you're talking about somebody who's a coach, you do have to give them the benefit of the doubt. It shouldn't just be a snap decision where it's like this person has one bad day and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, get the fuck out. No, that's not the way that you should do it. You should recognize that, hey, there's something up here. There's something wrong right now. And I need to, as the owner or the leader, I need to intervene. I need to have a one-on-one conversation with the person. I need to find out what's up. They might be going through the most difficult time in their life. And if you had added fuel to that fire, you might have just kind of pulled the ripcord on everything that they're all about and ruined a lot more than just their job or their gym membership or whatever. So, sit down, have a one-on-one conversation, actually come from a place of care, ask them some questions. And if you get to the point in the conversation where they're just like, man, I'm just not happy here. Man, I don't like what you're doing. I think that this is bullshit. I think that your coaches suck, whatever. That might be the opportunity for you to say, well, listen, you'd probably be happier elsewhere. And that's ultimately what I want for you. I want you to go somewhere where you're going to enjoy the experience. And I want the experience here to be great. Unfortunately, right now, it doesn't seem like we're at a place where we can find a common ground. So I think the best path forward is for you to not be a member here anymore. That might not be the first conversation, by the way. That might be conversation 2 or conversation 3. But I think the ultimate point there is that it's not a snap decision. It's unless it's like a crazy, obviously a type of event where it is a snap decision. But have a conversation, try to come from a place of care, talk to the person, and then see whether or not you have to make that decision.
We've been talking a lot about, having the right people in your community, in your circle, on your team. From a business gym owner, hiring perspective, where MDV, I'm curious your thoughts too. Where does hiring externally versus like really just promoting from within fit into that? Like, is there a way to hire externally, a head coach and maintain the culture you have? I know that, promoting within is easier said than done. Sometimes, but I don't know, where do you guys fall on that? Like, is there a place for both? Is it one better than the other?
I'd prefer to start by elevating people currently on the team. That would be my preference, is because I think it's good for the team to see that there's growth potential, that they're a step above a little bit because they've been in the organization for a while, they understand the culture. I think you start there. But then if you can't identify a good fit, obviously you need to go out to a greater public. For example, you talk about level of care. So we're taking over a gym in Pleasanton basically right now. And there's a group that has a barbell club a couple days a week. And there's a small group, 4 or 5 people, but they're really into it. And that's what they love. And so we had to go to them, and have multiple conversations as staff at the current location. And I'm actually going there tomorrow to go have more conversations to let them know that, even though this class might be going away, we would still love you to be a part of the culture of the community and the classes. But I think once they see how much you care, they'll buy more into the overall process instead of just saying, hey, class is canceled, forget you. I think back to MDV's point, it's like a long going conversation that needs to happen. But to the point of hires, for that particular location, we hired from within. And we had someone who was available. They were going to do a great job. And I'd rather show other people in our organization that we're going to elevate our team. But then we couldn't fulfill the full schedule. So we identified people outside the organization to help with the rest of the schedule. That ended up being a perfect mix because now we're pulling in these new people on a part-time basis and we're letting them get indoctrinated into how the culture we want to have. And then hopefully those people will eventually rise up and become bigger faces. Now, eventually, if you have a job that you don't have anybody qualified for, that's a completely different case. I would recommend putting out a job post, get someone part-time, see how they do. And then after a probation period, get them full on.
I want to always hire the best person for the job. I care less whether or not they come.
That's a mic drop. That's a good one. Yes. I don't care. Yes. It's good.
It's just as true. I think that, and for me, the best person for the job not only has to have a certain level of qualification based on the job that I'm hiring for, they have to have skills. That's almost like just fucking showing up. Like, I need you to have the skills to be able to do the job. Duh. Yeah. I wouldn't be looking at you if you didn't have the skills. But even the bigger part of this is, does this person get it? Do they understand what we're all about? Do they understand what the role is all about? Do they understand the commitment level that's involved in it? Do they have the intangible factors that I know they're going to need to be successful in this role? Take, for example, hiring a new coach. If I'm looking at a pool of candidates internally, and let's say some of them are, current members, or some of them are interns or front desk staff, if they don't have the it factor that I know at this point in my career we need to have for the person taking this job at the jump, or I don't think that they're able to tap into that, there's no reason why I should look to that pool of people. It's just going to be an uphill battle the whole time. It's going to take too long. They maybe can develop it over time, but for me, what I need them to have, I need to have them have a certain level of skill and qualification that they can read in any fucking book, and they're available online, and go get the certification. But they have to have a certain level of understanding of the intangibles that we're looking for. They have to be able to tap into that at the outset. Maybe not master them at the outset, but at least show me that you have the potential for that. Because if you're not showing me you have the potential for it, why am I going to go out of my way to try and bend over backwards to show you what these things are? I'm going to tell you what I need, but if you can't express them, it's almost too much work than it's worth. If that makes sense.
I was listening to the episode of the intro podcast. Check that out with the guru. And you guys were talking about hiring coaches. That thing got me fired up, man. But one thing that you just reminded me of now, when you guys were talking about hiring coaches, and you just mentioned it now, like, you know, within 30 seconds of talking to someone, like, you know, if they have that it factor. And I know what you mean. And I think that I've also gotten better at recognizing, you know, on an interview or talking to someone, like if they have that it factor. But, you know, how can someone that maybe hasn't, you know, been able to sniff that out in an interview process, how can you refine that skill? Or how can you try to put into words what it is that you're looking for in those first 30 seconds?
First, I think it comes down to having a strong understanding of what's important to you and what's important to your organization. It might be different for other organizations. Things that are important to us are a certain level of professionalism, how you treat the craft, a certain level of positivity, and a certain level of energy. We're looking for those three things. If you don't come into the interview expressing those three things, it's probably not going to turn out very well. That might be very different for what Dale's looking for at Guru Fitness, or what they're looking for down the road at X, Y, or Z Fitness. Have a strong, really strong understanding of what those things are, and then start to be able to recognize it, not only in people who you're interviewing for the job, but just fucking people who you interact with on an everyday basis. Go and find other people and start talking to them. What makes the person who makes your latte at Dutch Bros, or hopefully you're drinking Last Port Coffee Company, product placement.
Shout out to Last Port Coffee.
But maybe what you'll do is you'll start to identify traits and what makes that person make you feel a certain way. And then what you'll do is you'll drive your car, you'll drive it down to the car wash, and you're going to interact with somebody over there who's a fucking pain in the ass 99.9% of the time. You're going to go, what are the traits in this person that make me feel this way? And then when you're looking to bring people on the team, you can start to connect the dots. Because you know, honestly, professionalism, positivity, and energy, when anybody is doing those three things combined, you're going to get fired up. I don't care if they're mopping floors. I don't care if they're cleaning your car. I don't care if they're making your coffee or coaching your class. And people who are doing those are typically people that stand out, and you're like, that person has it. So that's my answer there. Jay?
Hey, Gabe, I was just going to say, how's that internet going over there in the ranch? You kind of cutting in and out a little bit, buddy. You're how's the farm life right now? I just had to ask before we close this out.
Jay loves farm life.
I love listening to the farm life because it's so far outside the scope of what I know.
You know, here's the thing. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. Like, I love the discipline, the repetition, and like, man, there's nothing more like regimented than having to raise a bunch of animals. You know, like it's a lot of hard work, but I've become so like crazy passionate about nutrition and food, where it comes from, and to be able to marry like having full control over that with something that like requires so much discipline and so much just like literally every single day, rain, shine, tired, got good sleep, didn't get good sleep. Like certain things need to get done. Like there's probably 20 animals out there that we're caring for right now, in addition to everything else we have going. And I love it. Like it's the amount of like work and structure that's in line with stuff that I'm super passionate about, that at least so far, I'm still loving it. And
there he goes.
Awesome. And, you know, pigs processed. Did the internet shit out?
Yeah, a little bit. It's all good, man. You're in the middle of Texas with your ranch.
But we got our first batch of pork out, man. And it is, I don't know if it's just like mental, because like, you know, a lot of work went into that pork, but man, nothing has ever tasted that good.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking of which, we had a couple entrepreneurs here, and it's been really fun for me to see. And I think these conversations are always great. I think they could pivot from coaching and business and whatnot. But, MDV's got his coffee company with along with his wife, Mindy. And she has her own, thing going on, which is great. And then, Gabe, same thing, right? You and Ariel have basically like this farm concept going on with eventual at what farmers markets you're going to go to, and then she has her own business. It's very fun for me to see, right? Because even though you guys are a major part of NCFIT, and that's obviously like your full-time commitment, you also have these other things that provide you a level of fulfillment. It's a lot of fun for me to see. And I think the lessons that you're going to learn through that are going to be able to carry into what we're doing at NCFIT. So it's all good all overall.
Hell yeah. Hey, I'm gonna throw a little curveball here. Are we doing Sober October? Are we gonna do 31 days of no booze and no processed foods? Jason,
Is that October?
October's tomorrow.
Wait, does it count if it's my birthday on the 2nd?
Oh my gosh. Jason's birthday is like the litmus test for every like major event that we have to have. You can start on October 3rd if you want, but you got to go 3 days past.
I got to go to like the November 3rd. Well, now I got the Rogue Invitational coming up at the end of the month.
God,
So
Oh,
no. I'm not saying I have to drink. I'm saying hey, I'm getting off the carbs a little bit and trying to get a little jacked before the Invitational. So maybe we have to get off the carbs a little bit, the booze.
Oh man. No, I think it's a good test for people. Booze isn't something that I personally struggle with, but I know a lot of people do. And, even a couple of drinks or 3 or 4 drinks per week, it can take that out of your diet or your routine, and it can feel a little different for a while. But
we should talk about that on another episode, because for me and like my wife, and not my kids, obviously, but there's a therapeutic, there's a social component to it, right? So like maybe at night, you open a bottle of Pinot and you're having a conversation, you're talking about the day, and there's something like social about that. And then when you get rid of that, it's like, well, it's not the same drinking a glass of water. And so I think that's a cool subject to talk about for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for a lot of people, and I'm not saying that this is your case specifically, but we're getting to the point where like for kids, it's social media, right? Like they're learning to only have human interaction through a screen, and for a lot of adults, it's like the social component needs a little bit of lubricant for it to happen, and we're losing the ability to have like deep conversations, loosen up, like without it. So I think this stuff is powerful, and it's interesting what different people kind of lean on booze for. I'm down for Sober October. I'm going to join Jason though and start on the 3rd because we have a wedding on the 2nd. But
Sober October-ish.
Sober October from the 3rd to the 3rd.
Oh man,
I think it's a good test. I think the processed food part is going to be a lot more difficult, I think, for a lot of people, because if you really get down to brass tacks and you are super strict on that, you're going to have to remove a lot of things from your diet and solely eat whole foods, which is tough for a lot of people. And a lot of people might not have access to it, which I know is another conversation. But yeah, the booze conversation is an interesting one, man. I think that we should probably set up some more time to talk about that.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, we have a call with our team coming up in a couple of minutes. But I think these kind of conversations are a lot of fun. And I think that, if someone's a collective member, an NCFIT athlete, just someone who follows the brand, we want to kind of start talking about more subjects. I'll start putting out some more Q&A type stuff on Instagram, and maybe pull some of those into these conversations. I think the idea is just to allow people to kind of see underneath the hood a little bit more. We're not just robotic fitness people. We have lives, we have things going on, and we have opinions on specific subjects. I think that's really important to share with other people.
For sure.
No, I love this. Let's do it more often.
All right. Who's wrapping it up, Gabe?
That's it. We'll see you guys hopefully once a week, once every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
once a month. Ooh, weekly deliverables, my favorite.
The weekly deliverables is the way to go.
All right. So hopefully we'll see you guys next week. MDV, thank you. Check out the intro. Jason, thanks again. Man needs no intro. We'll see you guys in a bit.
See ya.
Let's go.